Hey, it's Grady at Twin Creek Audio, and today I want to share with you 3 reasons why I use a lot of analog gear in my studio, especially when I'm mixing. I'll mix through analog equipment and hardware. The first reason is what I'm going to put under the gigantic heading of digital issues, and that's things like plug-in subscription costs and also operating system or compatibility issues and having to buy a new version of a plugin because you updated your operating system. Those type of things can waste a lot of time and money, and so that's reason number 1 why I use a lot of analog equipment in my studio and when I'm mixing. Not that I have any kind of a problem with digital. I think it sounds fine, and I have had some comments, people criticizing me, why do you have all that stuff? Just use plugins in the box, it sounds great. That's true. I don't have any issue with the way it sounds, but there are some issues with the time it takes to sort through some of the digital issues that I mentioned previously, especially when you get a new Mac or a new PC and you're trying to move everything. Your licenses and things like that have to be moved from your old machine that you were using to your new one. And I've been through that experience many times, and sometimes it's taken me a week in my spare time to get my new digital audio workstation rig working properly with all the plugins that I want from my old system. So that stuff just is a little bit of a hassle, less of a hassle for me than plugging in some insert cables to the back of a compressor and then plugging that into an insert jack on a console. That stuff just seems like less of a hassle to me. But I'm an old analog guy, so take that as you will. Number 2 is that I just like the workflow better. I like having hands-on faders. I like having hands-on buttons and knobs and being able to turn things. I like being able to mix in the moment and actually move faders that control the audio levels of the different tracks of the mix that I'm working on. And I can't really do that in real time in the DAW so much. Yes, I know I can automate it that way and all that, but I like, mixing in real time because it's just more fun for me. So I like the analog workflow. I like the faders, the buttons, the knobs. I like knowing what all of my equipment's going to do. I've used a lot of the compressors and things in my rack and my console many times. So yes, I have less choice with analog equipment than I do with popping up a menu with hundreds of plugins, but it also makes things work quicker because I don't have all those choices, and the choices that I do have I already know very well because I've used them so many times. Number 3, resale value. Now this goes back to what I was talking about in my first reason for using more analog equipment. The resale value of analog equipment is better than what you can resell a plugin or a piece of software, and that's if you can even resell it at all. So it doesn't make economic sense for me to spend money every month on a plugin subscription or even to spend $120 on a good plugin, because it's going to be harder to resell that, and you're probably not going to get as much money or get your money back on a plugin as you would on a piece of hardware. And I just love my analog hardware. I like collecting it. I also like the uniqueness of having my own analog hardware because I have a Symetrix 501 compressor. I use that on snare and bass guitar all the time. There is no plugin version of that. I don't think that there's an analog summing plugin for a Soundcraft Sapphyre like I have behind me. So I have a uniqueness to my mixes because I'm using a lot of hardware, most of which they don't make a plug-in version of. Admittedly, it's not the most expensive hardware, but the less expensive hardware made in the 80s and 90s, which is mostly what I have, does a really good job. So I really enjoy the individual character of each of my pieces of analog hardware. I really like using a lot of compressors. Obviously, if you've watched any of my videos, and I have a ton of different analog compressors. All my analog hardware is pretty inexpensive, things that I've bought used, except in a couple of cases. Now, rather than just talking and telling you my 3 reasons, I'm going to do a mix example so you can hear some of the analog hardware in my studio in action. And if you're really interested, after I play the example, I'll go into some of the details on how I did it and what analog hardware I'm using. Shattered spaces, and we want in the air, repeating on and on. Big mistake, I won't follow down again, and I'm breathing, finally seeing, revealing, sparkle on the way. It's out of range, it's in the air, it's in the air. So let's start with the drum sounds and some of the analog tricks that I'm doing in here. On the kick drum, I'm using one channel of a DBX 1066 compressor on that kick drum and a little bit of console EQ. On the snare drum, in the original track, we had stick clicks and a full snare. I split those in the box and I sent the stick click track to a channel on the console and then the full snare to a separate channel so that I can treat those differently. In this case, I'm compressing the click, the rim click track with the DBX 163X compressor, and I'm compressing the full-blown snare track with the other channel of the DBX 1066. You may also notice that I have some red lights up there. Those are gates that I have that are built into the console. So the full snare track is gated, as are the stereo tom track. So these are actually 3 toms, and I submixed those in the box and sent them out to this pair of channels to treat them. So we've got some console EQ, and we're also using the LA Audio 4x4, which is a FET compressor. It's not an expensive one, but it sounds great, using kind of a fast release to get that really huge, long decay on the toms, make them sound really big when they hit. I'm not processing the overheads other than some EQ, and there is a hi-hat mic, and that was just blended into these 2 overheads. Then we've got a drum room mic, a touch of the console EQ, and 1 channel of an ART TCS compressor. The bass guitar is getting a little bit of console EQ, boosting some low mids and a little bit of high mids for the attack. And I'm using the Symetrix 501 compressor on that bass guitar. The main clean guitar is getting just a touch of console EQ. And of course, all of this is getting the nice analog saturation of running through all these channels on the console. Then we've got some more guitars, really not doing anything to those guitars other than high passing some of those heavy guitars so they don't have too much overbearing low end. Then we've got some guitar solos and some vocal tracks. The guitar solos, I'm also using the ART TCS twin compressor system to compress the lead guitar and the melody guitar. Then we have our acoustic guitar and our lead and background harmony vocal over here. The acoustic guitars are actually two separate acoustic guitar parts that were played, and they're panned pretty much hard left and right. No EQ, just high passing those on the console. The vocal tracks on the lead vocal, I'm running that through the Urei LA-10 compressor, which has that really nice, smooth, and big sound with its transformer balanced input and output. Finally seeing, revealing, sparkle on my wing. The background vocal I'm running through another of my ART TCS twin compressor system. There is no reverb of any kind on this mix other than the drum room mic and maybe a little bit of spring reverb and delay on that main guitar, and that's the way that it was recorded. So I'm not using any artificial reverb at all in this mix. And that's partially just so you can hear the analog goodness without a lot of reverb, making everything sound bigger in a fake digital way. All of these compressors are on the inserts of the console. I'm not using any kind of parallel compression or anything, just basic analog inserts to the compressor back to the console. I really do enjoy using my analog console and my analog outboard gear for mixing, but I also will use it for tracking in many cases, so it's just versatile to have some good analog gear. These are very good tools that actually hold their value a little bit in resale and are useful in the meantime, so it is definitely worth thinking about if you are planning to add some analog hardware to your studio. You can let me know what you think in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching. I appreciate all the new subscribers. Make sure to check out the links in the video description for other videos that relate to this video, as well as other links that help support this channel. I hope each and every one of you out there has an excellent and wonderful day, night, evening, weekend, weekday, hour, minute, second, nanosecond, whatever it is you're having, have a good one. Thanks so much for watching. Shattered spaces.